Well, all great journeys always start from a great river.
Yes.
I don't know whether you know. So we're going to start at a great river, the main river of Europe, and we're going to finish at the main river of Africa, the Nile.
And it's just the most incredible route.
It is, it certainly is. We're going through the Tatra Mountains to start with, day after tomorrow. And what the competitors don't know yet, our 48-hour car, which is up there now,
Yes.
is stuck in snow.
Ah,
So he's creating another route at this very, very moment.
really?
Yeah.
I think one of the great things is the fantastic variety of cars that you've managed to get together.
Yes, well, I obviously don't choose them myself, but nevertheless, the people that entered the event
Yes.
came with pre-war cars, beautiful pre-war cars, cars of the 50s, cars of the 60s. We have a beautiful variety.
Yes.
I'm delighted. It's well, it's a dream. I think we are trying to get the best combination of both sportsmanship and the world culture.
Yes.
We're going to see one of the world wonders, the pyramids, but we're going to the caves in Cappadocia. First time we went there and saw it was when we did a rally from Peking to Paris.
Yes.
And unfortunately we drove through it so fast we
Yes.
didn't see a thing.
Yes.
So I decided that's maybe also part of the success of the event, that we give people a lot of time to see the things that you're passing by. It's a shame when you've been there and say, well, I've got to come back to see it again.
Yes.
So we try to do both.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
The locomotive is the first car away on this epic journey. You expect to see it. Tom and Rosie Katsanidis are amongst the favourites for success in the vintage class in their Alvis. Nigel Chalice's Land Rover had broken its axle before they even got to the start.
We got here fine, just it broke down as we arrived. Had to get the new axle fitted.
How did you find a new axle out?
Well, fortunately there was one at home, so I rang up my wife and my next door neighbour. They drove out 500 miles with it and delivered it yesterday afternoon.
Very good.
So it was good, yeah. Fit it and it goes well, and they now take the old one back.
All go very smoothly now. The trip will be perfect. Yes, indeed. We're ready for it. We're prepared.
The rally started at Mainz in Germany, after the original starting point, Mannheim, became unavailable at the last minute. But nobody seemed to mind. After a dull and wet trip along the Autobahn, the first regularity was at Spessart, east of Frankfurt. This very first section allowed some of the crews to discover that it wasn't always best to rely on your GPS to get from one place to another, when simple map reading might have been more reliable. Freddie and Janet Giles had won the Around the World rally, but navigation had been quite straightforward on that. This was to prove an altogether tougher proposition. It wasn't long before the rally had reached the old East Germany, with lunch in Bayreuth. Already with problems was David Hall, who had had to switch to his unprepared XK120 at the last minute, and was already suffering the consequences.
You're asking me what's wrong with the blooming thing? It's the fuel pump by the sound of it. We just lost all our electrics.
No, it's having a vasectomy.
Drag anybody down to the
The rally's first of 9 border crossings was into the Czech Republic. The easiness of the passage here was to lull the crews into a false sense of security for what was to follow as we got closer to Asia.
I hope all the borders are going to be as easy as this. They're all warned and they have all the information, and they stop them more out of curiosity than anything else. They really want to have a look at the cars.
The Czech Republic was a very pleasant surprise for newcomers to the country. The old spa town of Mariansky Lansky had some fine architecture, which several of the crews were able to view from all sides, as roadworks had meant a last-minute reroute and a bit of confusion. After that, there were plenty of admirable old villages to view, both on and off the route, and many crews saw parts of the Czech Republic that they weren't supposed to. And several cars were going quicker than might have been expected as they struggled to make up time. The following morning saw another tricky regularity. Caroline Ward ensured that Michael Kuntz took the right route. At the day's first time control at Polna, southeast of Prague, the village was full of curious onlookers. Paul Manassian had brought his Peugeot to the party and was one of the only cars to be running with 3 crew members.
I'd rather stick to time,
right, okay.
and put my foot down if we just seem to be hesitant. I wouldn't want to gamble and run early because
Right.
because that would be I can very nicely see one control here and another one afterwards.
Well,
and if I'm running early, well, obviously we're going to get clobbered on the first one.
What happened here? We were moving
I just thought that the rear configuration of a Morgan were left to be desired, so I thought that redesigning was definitely the order of the day, and so I redesigned it. Alberto didn't seem to mind too much. He's a nice guy, like him. I think he likes me, so got away with it lightly.
We were stopped to look at the sign in the side of the road, and suddenly we hear like somebody wanted to stop the car, and he hit us in the back. He couldn't stop. He was coming too fast. He told us he was coming too fast. But there was space on the left side because it was a double road and he could have passed. But I imagine he thought he could stop. And he had a French car. They don't have good brakes. So he hit us and he made 2 holes on the side of the car because he had something in front of the car. And he hit us, and there are 2 pieces of the metal from the back gone, but it didn't hit the gas tank. We go for the first place, and as of now, we're still in the first place. We're winning, like always.
Aby zase skončil tak gubák, jo?
By now, Gatsinidis had taken up a position at the head of the Vintagians, and at Srebrenica there was a very popular passage control, both with the competitors and the local people. The crews were happy because they all got a couple of bottles of free beer. The locals were happy because they had never seen anything quite like it. Now the rally was getting higher, and as the crews sped into the Tatra mountains, so the temperature dropped. Next morning, and a bit of fun. An auto test around an old bus station consisting of a slippery grass-covered concrete surface. Here, Heather Milne-Taylor guides Richard Fennells around the cones.
And up through the centre, around here. Turning left inside this one. Then you want to pick that one up round to the right. Get through here. Then through that one. Then turning right to stop and stride the finish. Finishes here, stop and stride.
The test was unusual in that there was no set route. As long as you went through all the cones, it didn't matter which order you did them in, but you still had to do it as quickly as possible. And Janet Giles directed Freddie to the fastest time of the day.
Beautiful. She's a very fine woman, just like my wife. Without women, we'd be nowhere, would we?
You were second over the bogey.
Second over? Faster?
No, below.
Below? Oh, well, that's good. Yes, it was a beautiful little test.
How are you doing overall?
We're 8th.
Well, that's very good, I think.
We're pleased with that. Well, yes, it can only get worse from here.
It's the start of day 3. We had breakfast in Slovakia, we're having lunch in Hungary, and dinner in Romania.
But along the route there was still plenty to look at, and at the start of the regularity at Krasnohorsky there was one of the most attractive castles so far. and most crews stopped to take a look, although it did help that there was a time control there.
Yeah, 11, 13.
Okay, car number 70. We're going on 11, 13.
Yeah, I got a dodgy time there by 5 or 6 minutes. So
5 or 6 minutes?
Yeah, I'm not sure which it is.
Nothing trivial then?
No, on irregularity. I accepted what he gave me.
Chip will tell the truth.
Well, the chip will tell the truth, but it won't tell the accurate time, but it should tell the minute.
No, it should do. Yes.
You know what I mean, it will tell the minute.
Yes.
Best of luck.
Bye-bye.
This was only the route for the trial runners. The club and the Vintagians had an extremely dull road section to contend with. As we approached the Hungarian border, there was a feeling among many that we were now getting into uncharted territory, and from now on the border crossings were bound to get a little bit longer. This was the first chance to see storks nesting. A big surprise at first, but something that was to become commonplace as the event progressed. Overall leaders now were George Nibbler and Willie Cave, one old hand leading another around the route, which took us past the 13th century Boldogo Castle, otherwise known as Happy Rock. Lunch today was in Tokay, a beautiful little town famous for its dessert wine since Henry VIII's times. There was the opportunity for a wine tasting, but the fact that the crew still had a long day ahead of them meant that not many got a chance, although some of course did.
But what do you want for €5 a bottle? I think another half an hour the police will pick you up.
But here was a rarity. An unusual car even by classic rally standards, and something for the crews to look at.
Here's your car. Good rally car.
One of the most interesting things about the Hungarian roads was the amount of apple blossom. At the side of the road though, Peters and Wolf in their Triumph TR4 were having a bit of a crisis.
About an hour and a half ago we started getting trouble with overheating of the car, and it started boiling here in town. And we asked at the Shell gas station where we could find a radiator repair shop. And they sent us here, and these people were very kind enough to start on the car straight away, so we can get going in about an hour, I hope.
Well, actually, we're very happy that it happened now, because we got no time control this evening, so we're no worries about coming in late. And if it would have happened, say, 10 days later out in Jordania or Syria or Egypt, who knows how we would have survived there.
As we approached our third country in one day, even the ordinary road sections were getting tougher.
Do you know where you are, John? Do you know where you are?
Where are we?
And yes, you can fit a family of 6 into a trappy. Fortunately, the Automobile Club of Romania were on hand to help everyone at the border, and this speeded things up considerably. Our overnight stop at Palmyra was pleasant enough, and the people very friendly, but this was a bleak town, and you started to realise how lucky you were to only be stopping there for one night.
Half a minute.
Early the next morning, and we were into the mountains again for another freezing cold, snowy regularity. Here there was no other traffic apart from the rally, and the only smell was that of burning wood in the log fires of the houses around us. It was almost as if we were really going back in time now. After the snow came the first real shock of the rally with a very rough gravel section. This suited some cars more than it suited others, and it was to catch a lot of people out, but was unavoidable if the rally was to follow the route devised by Matt Monster Keith Ford and organiser Bart Rietbergen. Transylvania. In many respects, this was one of the most intriguing places on the entire journey, surrounded as it is with so many myths and stories. And lunch was at Bradett, a place at the very heart of those stories.
Lunch on the fourth day, it's the most beautiful place we've been to so far. This is where Vlad the Impaler used to live, quite famous for putting people on stakes and killing them if they'd stolen anything. And also the rumour spreads that this is where Count Dracula used to live. Of course, Count Dracula didn't exist, but this is the area of the vampire countries. It's a beautiful place.
I think it's, if I was going to speak politically, I think that they're lacking their infrastructure, you know, they're as poor as churchmen. I've never seen such a poor country. It's quite stunning, you know, to see such poverty. But in Vlad's time there was no crime here, because you know what he did with people in Impaler. There was no double parking, there was no spitting, no litter, which I think is a policy we could really adopt in London at the moment.
Oh, fine. We have a good time. Really safe drive. Interesting to see this country. We had heard a lot about this country, of course, but now it's nice to drive through and to meet people and to see the places.
Bradett, the route split again, with the Vintagents and the club drivers going one way and the trial another. We came across the first of the trial crews sometime later.
It's late on the fourth day. We're rushing through the city of Brasov in Romania in high-speed chase with the rally leaders. They went one way, we came the club route, and we've all sort of converged at the same time. They seem to be in a great hurry to get somewhere, but I'm not actually too sure where they're going at the moment. So, but it's all very exciting. We're doing 60 miles an hour on a set of tram lines. Let's hope there's not a tram coming.
Yet again we were into the snow, and to prove that this wasn't a rally just about sightseeing, the intensity of the competition meant that just a few seconds lost would see George and Willie lose their lead to Heather Milne-Taylor and Richard Fennells. These Carpathian mountains are home to one of the few remaining populations of European brown bear. Ceausescu had them vigorously protected, so he could shoot them himself. Fortunately, he missed a lot, and Romania now has an invaluable tourist asset. 60% of all the bears in Europe. Needless to say, we didn't see any. Now we were heading out of the mountains and into Bucharest, and it was here that we were to get the biggest eye-opener of the event so far.
Here we are at the end of the fourth day in front of one of the greatest monuments to one person's vanity in the entire history of the world. This is Nicolae Ceausescu's presidential palace, the third biggest building in the world, 280 metres long, 240 metres wide and 46 metres high.
Well, I think it was worth every penny that was spent on it.
Breakfast at the Bucharest Marriott cost the equivalent of a month's wages for the average Romanian worker. The border crossing from Romania to Bulgaria is actually over the river Danube, this long bridge separating the two countries. We were told to be careful what we filmed here, but actually no one seemed to mind. For a lot of the British crews, the sight of disinfectant baths was an uncomfortable reminder of what the UK had been through with the previous year's foot and mouth disease. Once into Bulgaria, the lack of good road maps meant that the GPS system started to come into its own, and the competitive part of the event got even tougher. Here at Popovo, Freddie and Janet Giles wait to start a regularity with a self-start time of 5 minutes after they checked out of the time control. Get your own start time wrong, and you've got no chance on the regularity.
What do you think of Bulgaria? It's a little bit of a mess.
It's possible that the next few days were to provide the toughest navigational test that many crews had ever come across. Experienced or novice, camera crew or clerk of the course, if you didn't get lost somewhere in Bulgaria, it's because you were lucky.
Het was fantastisch. Echt genoten. Ah, thank you. Thank you.
We have the pleasure to meet you here. We are Bulgarian Auto Retro Club. This is for your car.
Oh, that is good. I've got this a sticker. I'm going to stick it on.
Yeah, yes, on the windscreen.
On the rear window. Windscreen, it's better?
Yes, better. I think better here. Okay.
On the other side of the car.
Nice to meet you.
Fantastic. Oh, thank you very much. Oh, le Club 404. Yes. Ah, vous parlez français quand même.
At the end of a long, tough day, the crews had plenty to chat about.
Well, I think we've blown our fourth place.
We've blown our gold.
Yes, we've blown our gold. We on the first regularity we got severely lost. Didn't find the first turning. And at one point we were 15 minutes late, and Janet tells me that we got in 1 minute early. I'm not sure how the car did it, and that's not confirmed yet. We may have been on time, but I don't think so.
The first regularity was quite tricky. We got the right route, I think, but what our time is, I've no idea. I'm waiting to find out.
You're brilliant.
Well, I'm still on course, but you're ahead of me now. You're about 5 seconds ahead, I think.
Why? What
there may be others.
Well, if that other one is right, we've dropped 11. But I'm a minute to 11 at the moment.
I don't know, I seem to have been fairly clumsy on it. I don't know why. I've got one where I was actually 8 seconds early.
Well, you see, it's all about
though, 8 seconds
looking at the regulations and cheating place. There is a God.
Thank you, God. You can't say that to my pal, yeah, that's it. Spot on. My hero.
With all that wrong slotting, some very nearly didn't make the control on time. we had found ourselves in the rather quaintly named seaside resort of Sunny Beach, where with beer at €1 a litre, it's perhaps a good job that British holidaymakers haven't quite discovered it yet. However, the evening's entertainment was the best that there had been so far, and with lots of free wine, the night was a good one. Leading by just a handful of seconds, Richard Fennells and Heather Milne-Taylor led the cruise away from Sunny Beach and across the real Bulgaria. Turkey is keen to join the common market, but there's no chance until they can get their border control sorted out. Everyone waited at least an hour here, and no one seemed to know what was going on. To say that they were unhelpful would be a massive understatement. Into Turkey itself, and at least the weather was warming up. Once out in the countryside, and the difficulties in navigation continued. If there was a junction, you could almost guarantee that some crews would go the wrong way. Karl-Heinz Fustel and Ursula Sagner were enjoying themselves. But you did get the feeling that Karl and the Porsche wanted to go a little bit quicker than the event allowed. In one small village, the locals were in their usual tea shop, watching the proceedings with some amusement.
Can you point us in the right direction, Paul?
That way and then left.
Yeah, thank you. It's always nice to have help.
Yeah, it is that way and then left. You're absolutely right, Paul. Thanks. You're very good. You should be in this seat.
Yeah, you're better than him anyway.
With a week gone, we were about to have our first rest day. But first we had to find our way into Istanbul and the Conrad Hilton. It was a tough trip, but George Niblett and Willie Cave had something to smile about. They had won the first leg.
Having survived the terrible traffic yesterday, driving ourselves, we decided to take a taxi across town, and we're now crossing the Golden Horn. reputedly the finest natural harbour in the world. It's still as busy, and it's probably just as dangerous sitting in the taxi as it was in your own car. This way we've got no control, and being a nervous passenger like a lot of drivers, it sort of gets you a bit. Well, already we've been got out by all the salesmen trying to haggle and stuff. I've never seen so many carpet shops and people selling leather and watches and jewellery. And this is the entrance to the Grand Bazaar, which is apparently something that makes the Medina. Oh, they lost the cameraman then. Don't walk out in the street. There you go, that'll be funny. Lose the cameraman, falls into a car and gets run over. This is one of the most incredible sights I've ever seen. I've seen shopping malls in America, but the size of this, just look at the length of this hall. And we're in a street at the moment which appears to sell nothing but jewellery and carpets. And apparently there's 100 acres of shops. And you can't believe that people could make a living. Just look to the right, Paul. There's a shop there just selling bangles. How many bangles do you have to sell in a day to make it worthwhile? And next to that, and next to that. I don't know if this stuff's good. Well, you've got Amiga. They've got Rolex. So there seems to be some good stuff. Whether it's genuine or not, it's difficult to say. But it all seems very friendly, and all the men are standing outside the shops trying to entice you in, offering you bargains.
Where are the Rolexes? The Rolex. You see, I have three different quality of Rolex.
Three different quality of Rolex.
Yes. This is cheap one, very cheap.
Cheap, very cheap. Yeah.
The battery one. I
Yeah.
do the automatic one. If you want the best quality, you can
The best quality fakes.
What you
The
like?
cheapest quality fakes.
Submariner or a Daytona model.
You know, that's bloody good, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
It really is.
You wouldn't believe it wasn't real, would you?
No, you wouldn't.
I'm sure.
I have two different quality.
About £20.
You want to smoke?
The weight, they actually feel like the real thing, don't they?
That one is $110.
Oh no, that doesn't look as good as this one. No.
Yeah.
No, this is $50.
No, monsieur.
$50, yeah.
I think it's $50.
I think it's 50. Good $50. It's good $50 worth, isn't it? Yeah. I think the nicest thing about this, having been to the Medina in Morocco last year, is just how much more friendly it is. People will haggle, but there's no aggression and there's no feeling that you're going to get into trouble if you don't buy something. And people don't seem to mind us filming either, which is good. They're not asked for any money for it.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. No, not my type of thing.
Truly walk chest sets, water pipe, by Guillemon. Just looking inside, please. Good price for you. Have a look inside.
I'll have a look inside, but these aren't the sort of things that I buy. I'm not a...
Don't break my chance, please.
Don't break your heart.
Don't break my heart, yeah.
No.
Good. Where are you from, please?
We're from England.
London, Manchester.
Close to Manchester. I'm from Manchester.
Manchester United.
Manchester United.
Oh. I like you in England's football. Very strong.
Yes.
Very good.
Yes.
You know, Aston Villa.
Yeah, Aston Villa.
Alpay, Turkish people.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Alpay, very good.
Yeah,
Play
very
game.
good people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse me, myself. $50 for some pieces of wood that go together.
Excuse me, this is handmade, not.
And it is extraordinary. I've never actually seen anything like it.
This is good. This is bad. This is not possible. Bazaar one pieces.
This, I'm reliably informed, is a caravansary, which until now, all I was aware of was that it was a name of a Santana record. But this is where apparently they used to bring in their camels and they'd tie them up in here and let them rest for the night. I'm very pleased. Little bit of a trophy. I got my wonderful wooden ornament. We threatened to leave him alone, and we've got it for $15, which in English language is about a tenner. Started at $50 and got it down to 15. As soon as we turned to leave, the price plummeted. Blue Mosque, Santa Sofia, incredible, both of them.
In the evening, a trip to the local motor museum, which featured mainly classic cars. At the end of the evening, a presentation by Bart to the first leg's winners.
Very fancy prizes we have. Rosalie.
The Gatsanidis won the vintage section, the Halls the club section, and Niblett
Really?
and Cave
Well
the
done.
sporting route.
Thank you, Bob. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody who watched Around the World in 80 Days saw Chris Denham having an absolute nightmare to get out of Istanbul, and we were led to believe that it was going to be a nightmare this morning. But we're on the bridge within a minute of leaving the hotel, a couple of cars in front of us, no problems whatsoever with traffic. What a surprise, what a nice start to the day. Perhaps we've got time for a coffee. Oh yes. And so, this is Asia. Bit of an unusual start to our first day in Asia. There's been an incident involving Alistair Caldwell's Mercedes in which a bus and a truck collided, and the Turkish people are trying to blame him for it. Now they've invited him to the police station, and he's politely declined the invitation. He seems to be winning at the moment, but let's just find out and ask him what's been going on.
Oh, I made a mistake and tried to pass the truck when the bus was coming the other way. Realised, stopped, the bus had to brake, I had to brake like you do, but no real danger. I went back in again. And the truck in front of us that we were trying to pass had nothing to do with this at all. I think he was watching in the mirror what was happening and lost concentration and hit the back of the bus with the back of his truck. Now he thinks this is my fault, but this is very difficult to explain, to rationalise why it's my fault that he hit the bus. This guy.
Ya dur dedim ben sana. Dur. Bana bu.
This is the one that should be in
Orada
jail.
şahit var. Bak bu şey yaptı. Adamlar var. Arabada 5 kişi de insan var.
And then chasing with a rock.
Rastlasın diyor. Abi anladım da. Dur dedik bu kaza yapmışım. Kaza olmuş duracaksın onu. Dur dedik.
Away from the aggravation, one or two of the navigators thought that they'd found a more detailed map than they'd seen before, and were busily taking down all the details.
We found this marvellous map on the wall which has got little roads all over it, and we know we want some of them. And funnily enough, in this cafe they have not got a photocopier, so we're all having to make our own splendid little sketch maps of what we've got to do next.
But this was to prove to be a big mistake at worst and absolutely useless at best. Onto, into and through the hills they went with no problems. The problem started though in a village on the other side of the hills. Willie went right, and also after some confusion did Limerick's James O'Mahony.
No idea.
Willie, go this way.
Willie went that way.
Then the locals, thinking that the crews were heading straight for Ankara, tried to help and sent everyone to the right. Carolyn Ward thought otherwise, eventually, and stole a huge lead on everybody else. Luck or good judgment? You decide. Peters and Wolf frightened the cameraman slightly, and then asked for guidance. But this cameraman hasn't a clue either.
No, some have gone that way, some have gone that way. Both ways.
And then, would you believe they all came back? But on a different road than they went out on. And for a few minutes there was chaos, with cars going in all directions. Now some people blame the camera crews for the fact that they got lost here, but not Willie Cave, who tells it like it is.
Well, I'm not very good on tulips, and it was very clever what they'd done. It's too long a story to tell you, but they put in an intermediate time control, so we had 20 seconds to make up. So our instructions are based on the timing when we arrive, and so that was wrong, obviously, and where they said I had to turn left, I must have turned right. because I thought I was somewhere else.
Was it a compensation that most of the others followed you down that road?
Yes, it was a bit, yes.
Who got it right?
Caroline Ward. I think she's winning in a big way at the moment, because I was over 10 minutes late and the others were 8 or 9 minutes. Of course, they saw us, they were able to turn round. Lucky people.
Leading Ward?
So,
how do you go on that regularity?
Oh, it was lovely, really, just fabulous.
You were the first leading crew to get it right. Did you know that?
I gathered as much. We were after the next control and there was nobody there.
The rest of you are in the lead now?
No, definitely not.
Why?
Because that would be bad.
So that's why Caroline's so reticent, is it?
I can either confirm or deny that statement.
And still the fun continued. There wasn't much fun for the mother and daughter team of Thera Hoff and Paula Koenig, who had a broken suspension pickup on their TR4.
Is gebroken. Ja, moeten we niet verder mee rijden. Nee.
No, it's not safe.
Howard Bellum and Chris Taylor were still enjoying themselves though, quite possibly because they are obviously both mad. As we made our way across eastern Turkey, the scenery started to change. The destinations got more distant and the vastnesses got vaster. Into another day, and remarkably it still wasn't warm. Australian crew Jerry Crown and John Bryson had come a long way to take part in the event, and John was just starting to find his feet. To start the day, the organisers had thrown in a very short and simple regularity, with only one junction in it. And yet, once again, virtually everybody went the wrong way. This upset the leaderboard yet again, when Michael Kuntz lost his lead to New Rochbrune in the Volvo. Paul Menashin had been second overnight, but he slipped up here as well. Gus Pope and Julian Reddyhoff had been third overnight. Some crews lost a lot of time, so the regularity became more like a hill climb. Moving towards the head of the leaderboard at the start of this second week were Alistair Colwell and Sandra Dumel, and they would remain near the front for the rest of the event. Despite the almost total chaos on this test, most seemed to take it in the best spirit.
Oh, we took a couple of wrong roads, but we've got on the right one in the end. Morning.
Great fun.
Yeah, marvellous.
5 kilometres, everybody gets lost.
Yeah, marvellous. We have so much fun, we couldn't stop laughing. Okay, bye-bye.
The rally was heading more and more into the wilderness now, and villages, which themselves were few and far between, consisted merely of a few mud huts. A lunch stop and regularity have been arranged at Belisama, an extraordinary place which had cave dwellings and a cathedral built into the walls of the surrounding valley. And the houses in the village itself were as primitive as anything you could ever see. This was our first chance to see cave dwellings on the trip so far, but this was merely to set the mood for what was to come. Alistair Caldwell was trying to play a game called Pin the Donkey to the Wall, but fortunately for everybody concerned, he failed. Rural Turkey was a visual feast, with much to look at, and we were now heading towards Nevşehir in Cappadocia. But some had other things on their minds.
Okay. Geen problemen.
Oh.
Is je al bakjes kapot zijn of zo? Hier? What's wrong?
No,
electric.
Yeah.
Ignition switches.
In Dutch?
Broken.
Needless to say, on an event such as this, competitors stop to help each other.
Ik kan hem niet meer starten.
Start nou de kracht.
Al lichter doen het wel.
I don't have a clue what has happened.
We moved on and into the unbelievable underground city at Kaymakli. Most of the crews had taken the chance to visit this incredible underground city which was built over 6,000 years ago. Now, when it was built, they had no electricity, no mains water or anything like that, no sewage, and it's extraordinary to think. If you look down there, but it's just big holes in the ground, and it's difficult to know what they were all for. Holes here, holes everywhere. This one goes to 4 levels. There is one further down the road, about 10 miles, which goes to 8 levels. Imagine that, people just living further and further down. Whole cities of people, thousands of people.
How did they see where they were going?
How did they see where they were going? How did they know what to do with the water? This was the smaller of the 2 underground cities, only going 4 stories down. You can't really imagine what it must have been like to live there. Maybe they should put the Big Brother contestants down there and lock the doors.
This is only 4 foot high, this corridor.
Are you at the bottom?
I don't like this.
No, I didn't, but it gets better.
Ja.
Bergop. Maar ik denk ook dat je vanzelf omhoog.
now, De Rochebrune and Sir Fridas were enjoying their lead, but in this rally, your lead could disappear right around the next junction. Now we'll be in trouble.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It's very nice of you to join us. It's been a pleasure.
Okay.
So, here we are at 14,000 feet. It's the midpoint of the rally. Dutch crews still decided they want to throw snowballs at each other on the way to the Nile, to the sun and the pyramids. This is the highest point of the event. As you can imagine, it's very, very cold. Let's hope over the next week or so it starts to warm up a bit.
What a huge and fascinating country Turkey is. 4 days and we hadn't scratched the surface really, and soon we'd be across the last plain and into Syria.
We were promised plenty of sunshine today, and here we are crossing the great plain of Issos, and we've just come through the biggest electrical storm that you could imagine. But we got out the other side okay. We're now getting really into the great historical depth of this rally. It was on this plain at about 333 BC that Alexander the Great defeated Darius in the great battle, and as you know, he then went on to the semi-finals of the European Cup Winners' Cup, losing to a highly controversial penalty in the last minute.
Redioff had visited Turkey before, having won the London-Istanbul section of the Around the World Rally. Beginner's luck, many had claimed at the time, and perhaps they were right, as a repeat performance wasn't on the cards for this event. It's difficult to know what most people expected of Syria, but it was certainly a big surprise.
What we've got here is the cross between Turkey and Syria, and the Turkey paperwork is quite extraordinarily complex. Bear in mind, we're only leaving the country. We've got carnets to get in, they're checking all the carnets and all the paperwork. There's 3 different posts we have to visit, so basically the entire field is held up here and has been for the best part of an hour. In the day and age of free movement between countries, it all seems totally unnecessary, to be honest, but I mean, people have just got to be patient. This is all part of the great adventure. But just look at this queue.
The first regularity started by Saladin's castle, and this extraordinary needle of rock was actually cut by man to form the support for the drawbridge.
Good morning.
How did you find that then?
It was great, except we were low on petrol.
Oh.
So we asked a policeman, and he got on the back of somebody's motorbike. Yeah. And went at about 10 mile an hour, yeah. Stopped outside a hut, had the word mobile, so they rushed in. I said, how many you want? So he wrote 25 litres, I said thank you. and it comes out of a big oil drum in a can.
That's where they're getting it from.
Yes. So, I don't know what petrol we've got, but we've got petrol.
Here, 3, 3, 8. It is so steep up there and they have no clue. So some cars which are too heavy or have a very long first gear have a very hard time getting up there. And that's why one of them came back with smoke all over the place. Adds to the excitement, I think.
As you can see, we changed flags and we have the Syrian one today.
56. I
In,
think so too.
in honor of our host, the Syrians.
How's it going?
It's going very good. The driver is trying to get in the side of the navigante and that's not allowed.
10 seconds.
But we're coming second in the total overall.
4, 3.
So we're very good.
Well, we're only 2 litre and we've still got a tank full of Turkish petrol, and it's pinking so much I've retarded it to stop it, but it's pinking like hell, and we got to one point up there and simply slipping the clutch in first, it wouldn't go any higher. So we turned around, we tried it in reverse, we couldn't get up backwards either. So we called it a day and come down to the bottom again, so we'll have to find another way round. But I've never seen a hill where in first I just couldn't even keep the car going. So there we are, c'est la vie. Scenery was wonderful up there.
It's a bit sad that our pictures don't even begin to show how steep the climb was, but certainly anybody who saw it will never forget it.
It's either that or something else.
Even Alistair Caldwell and Sandra Jumel, whose big Mercedes was powerful and torquey enough to be one of the few cars not to be unduly troubled by the monster hill, and who now led leg 2, had profound memories.
Well, we fucked up on it. It was so steep. I've never seen a road as steep as this ever in my whole life.
After that, we had a calm drive to the fantastic Crusaders castle, the Crac de Chevalier. Built in the 13th century, this castle was the home to hundreds of village people until about 80 years ago, when the French moved them out to the nearby village and started restoration work. David Wilkes took the mantle of unpaid and unskilled tour guide.
It's a detached residence.
How was it built, David?
Built about, it's 20 or 30 years old. It's vacant possession. It is available at a very cheap mortgage. Stunning panoramic views over open countryside. All we really need to know now is there a National House Builders guarantee on the property?
Different. 2 doors here. One more. 2 doors.
Gazing down on this little Syrian village here reminds me that tomorrow is the anniversary of the death of my grandfather. He was killed at the Battle of Little Bighorn. He wasn't actually in the battle, but he was camping in the field next door, and he went next door to complain about the noise, and they shot him.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Okay, now we're ready to go.
It's quite extraordinary really that in less than 24 hours we've gone from the snow-capped mountains of southern Turkey into this vast desert in northern Syria. We've been running on one piston out, and then about an hour ago we took out a plug, so we're running on 4, and then we did about, what, 50k like that, and now it sounds like the cap's come off the big end. So it ain't going anywhere till we get the bottom off again. If we could take out a second piston, if the cap comes off and we can get the whole thing out, we may still have 4 good ones. We'll see.
Michael and Caroline offered to tow them to Palmyra. After all, it was only another 50 miles.
We're on the road to Palmyra, the great Roman ruined city that was used as a staging post on the routes to the east.
And what a place Palmyra was. Staggering, shocking, unbelievable. Any adjective you can think of, to be honest. I don't think anybody expected this. And in the evening, the Syrian tourism minister came out to see us and explained a little bit about the history of the place.
Well, first of all, I would like to welcome you all here in Syria. Syria, it's an occasion for you and for us to meet here or in Palmyra, and I hope that you are aware of the importance of Palmyra in the history. Palmyra in the ancient time, in the old times, used to be the hub of Syria to receive all the Silk Road caravans coming from Nara in Japan and in China, and to come to Syria, where to meet with other caravans coming from Europe, from Africa, and from the South Arabic Peninsula. So you are now in a point where was the heart of the world, at the crossroad of all the caravans, all the international commerce in the history.
After a night's entertainment of Bedouin boats, the following morning saw the crews heading further into the desert and to the Baghdad Cafe, where the first of the rally's GPS sections was to start. The sun had already started to affect Richard Fennell's. These GPS sections were very unusual, consisting purely of a number of waypoints that the crews had to find their way to. Find one, enter the next waypoint, and find the next. In the desert it's not that difficult, to be honest, as there are not too many buildings in the way, so everyone just enjoyed them for what they are. Here we travel with Paul Manassian.
Do you want me to follow track or better? Follow track.
Towards the level of top. Look for a piece to the level of top. Hello, is that it?
Waypoint section.
Thanks so much.
After the desert we found our way into Damascus.
We're in Straight Street in Damascus, an extraordinary place which is about a mile long, and it's just full of shops selling spices and tinctures and all sorts of things, and cloth and everything. This gentleman here kindly told me it's the oldest street in the world, and it's so fitting that the old-timer cars should be driving down here, giving everybody the thrill of a lifetime.
And when we reached the Syrian border, there was more of the same. Lockyer decides not to back off at the hairpin and pays a penalty.
You're right.
Yeah, fine. Yeah,
everything's fine. Yeah. My brakes failed. We're at sea level now, and we've still got another 400 metres to go down.
Slowly. Naught. Minus. Hooray.
Now we're at the lowest point on Earth, nearly 400 metres below sea level, and about to do something that you might never even dream you would do. Float in the Dead Sea.
So here we are at the Dead Sea now. Over there's the West Bank. Nearly everybody from the rally has covered themselves with this dark mud before diving into the water to see if they can float. Apparently this stops the water from stinging you because of the amount of salt that's in there. Makes you, any little cuts and you sting. So here we are, the lowest point in the world.
You haven't done your back.
Eh?
You haven't done your back.
Well, there's nobody to do it for me. So let's see if it's true that you can't actually sink.
Or drown.
Blimey. Never even went down. Oh, it tastes so... Oh, God, it's horrible. How bizarre.
I came here and in the overalls, just overalls, sort of knickers on. Looked at this and thought, you can't get this far and not go in. Overalls off, run in, come out, in the shower, jump in the car, and off we go. Then about 15 minutes down the road, everything's dried out and it's set solid. Loads of salt. So I'd thought no more about it till on the flight home, and then everything started aching and burning. And trying to go home and saying, sorry love, it won't work anymore, it's sore.
A few miles down the road, it looked like this could be the end for Podger and Bayliss.
Well, the vibration's getting worse and there's some funny noises, so I'd like to have the bottom of the sump off and have a look at it before we go any further.
So it's proportional as much as anything.
Well, I don't really want to break.
Well, from here it's up, isn't it?
This
is what, 330 metres below sea level. So the only way to Petra is uphill.
Yeah, the last time we bent the conrod, so I don't really want to do that again. So.
The next part of the journey took us from the Dead Sea and into the spectacular mountains on the road to Petra. This was to be the end of the second leg, and the trial winners on this section were Caldwell and Jumel, the club winners the Halls again, and the vintage winners the English Bentley driven by Gordon Phillips and Tony Davis. That evening there was a special surprise. We were taken to a place called Little Petra, down a narrow and candlelit desert path and into a moonlit sandstone valley.
I haven't a clue what's happening. We're here in a place called Little Petra. We've come in the dark. There's a sound of people chanting. We haven't got a clue what to expect. Oh!
Near Petra, at this absolutely amazing light and sound show that they did put on, and then this amazing dinner. It's just incredible.
It's just enjoyable, and it's a highlight of the trip.
Yeah,
you've got to think that 5,000 years ago, this place was inhabited, and we're just newcomers.
This place was thriving in the Nabatean times.
Yep.
Well, we never expected that. Very early the next morning, so as to avoid the heat of the sun, most people took the long walk into the extraordinary rock-hewn city of Petra, built by the Arab Nabatean people 2,000 years ago.
It's 7 o'clock in the morning. I've been up since 6 o'clock just to see this, the pink city of Petra. It's not very impressive, is it?
It's 2000 BC, I think.
3rd century BC it was built.
What, that one up there, the treasury?
3rd century BC it was built.
Yeah.
We're just a few miles now from Saudi Arabia, and anybody who knows the story of Lawrence of Arabia knows it used to like blowing up trains. This is the Hijaz line, one that he was particularly fond of destroying. The line was built by the Turks to take the pilgrims to Mecca, and maybe this is an old bit of it that I've just found.
This is Belanesco's 1398 Vauxhall, one of Lawrence of Arabia's favourite cars. And how fitting we should see it here at Wadi Rum, one of Lawrence's favourite places on earth. Sadly, that was the end of Jordan, and now, just to avoid a 5-mile drive through Israel, we had a 5-hour ferry trip instead across the Gulf of Aqaba to Nuweiba in Egypt. Alberto in the Morgan takes one look at the rust bucket that we were sailing on and decides not to bother. On board, most people took the chance to relax and to see one of the most extraordinary sights on the trip so far, Willie Cave's naked legs.
Coke, ice cold Coke, no, Coke.
We arrived in Egypt in the early evening and in plenty of time for dinner at the hotel. But what we didn't realise was that the Egyptians had other ideas, and it was 3 hours before the first cars left and 6 hours before the last cars left. It was such a shame, and without doubt the low point of the event so far.
We've been here, nearly 5 hours waiting for... They've checked our chassis number 5 times and the colour of the car. 76? Yeah. 75? 85? 85!
That is all down to Sead Travel, our agents in Egypt, who are making, I have to say, a fine mess of this product. Oh, it's all part of the rallying, rich tapestry of rallying, I think. And it's the sort of story, the sort of happening that people reveal, talk to their friends about over dinner for many months to come.
98! Yeah. Thank you. I'll give you forward.
Astonishingly, the Alvis was going again. At least they'd reached Egypt. There was still over a week to go, and after a very tough first day's regularities and a slip up by the Halls, Rooks and Croyce in their 104 Healy shared the lead for the club trophy with the hoteliers in their Peugeot 404. While in the trials section, Richard Fennells, Alistair Caldwell and Nigel Gray all shared the lead.
This is Mount Sinai, where Moses was reputedly delivered of the 10 Commandments. Doesn't get much more historic than that.
Well, I've brought you across the desert. It's very hot, and we found a mountain, and I've got the 10 Commandments. There's some good news and there's some bad news.
So what's the good news, David?
The good news, he kept it down to 10.
What's the bad news?
The bad news, adultery is still in.
When we got back to the passage control, 4 cars were being worked on. The Volvo had lost its shock absorbers. We had lost a shock absorber, so we had to go back and take that off, and we're going to run the rest of the rally without one. The Mercedes had lost its exhaust system complete, and the Austin Healey had a huge hole in the sump, and oil was pouring everywhere. So for one regularity, that's 4 cars to my knowledge.
We split the manifold in half, actually. There's about a half-inch gap between it now. So we've got to find a way to pull the 2 pieces together and try and wire it up so we can get it welded this evening.
I mean, the regularity was a bit bloody tough.
But people, I mean, fair enough, they want to win. It's only a game. But in actual fact, people were going like buggery after the event. In actual fact, one car has hold his sump after the event. And I can't see the point. It's a game.
You don't think that's very clever then?
No, I do not think it's very clever. I mean, it could happen to anybody in the event, but not afterwards. You've just got to be a bit steady.
This is the most fought over stretch of water in the world, the Suez Canal. So you have a problem with the car at the moment?
Ja, gistermorgen, de eerste regularity, was ontzettend zwaar. En die ging vreselijk hard over het grid en bumpy roads.
Because we seem to find some engine mounts. Ours broke yesterday in the last regularity. And yeah, we only noticed it last night. So now we're fixing it with a tie wrap. And I hope it will hold.
Tonight I got some replacements from my good friend the Blue 280 SL. And fortunately he had two brand new engine holders. Unbelievable. It's great.
So many days gone, and the organisers were still throwing bombs at the competitors. This was a nodding donkey test, and was where the GPS system really did prove itself to be less than ideal. The problem was that the waypoint was indicated as being almost straight ahead, but there was a definite T-junction in front of the competitors. It really was a 50-50 call, and one that caught a lot of crews out, including the leaders. This was in many respects the most controversial test of the whole rally. Disaster. What the competitors didn't know was that this road was not officially open, and whilst their attention was distracted, Peters and Wolf hit the sandbank head on.
And at Koninginnedag we'll have to wear funny things in orange and sell old things, worthless things to your neighbor.
Can I have your trousers please? Because it's orange. I need something orange today. Goedemiddag, hoe maakt u het?
Vakantieman.
Vandaag gaan we in kolonne naar Luxor. Het is vandaag voor onze feestdag, want het is Koninginnedag.
The fucking camel trophy.
Koningin Beatrix is jarig.
Because the Egyptian government are still wary of terrorist activity against tourists, all cars travelling from Hurghada to Luxor have to travel in convoy accompanied by police. And so it was that the remaining cars set off to travel the 260 kilometres across the desert. last we had arrived at the Nile, and there was a chance for the locals to look at the old relics. Almost everybody took the opportunity to visit the Valley of the Kings and the other surrounding monuments and burial sites the following day, and what an eye-opener that was.
ما بين جينا والترمسي ألماني ولا اسباني ولا فرنسي.
Here we are in the Ramseum, and at the bottom you can see Ramses II looking a bit the worse for wear. Heaven knows how that statue fell over. But like all of the architecture around here, it's incredibly impressive, much bigger, much more impressive than you could possibly imagine it would be. This is the temple of Hatshepsut, without doubt the favourite of mine so far. From the front it looks completely flat, but when you get up here there's a football pitch sized area and it just carries on going into the rocks. Behind me is the Valley of the Kings. Sadly you can't take your video camera into there, and neither can we.
What do you think of my new car? I did a rebuild. We've had it. My navigator is not feeling well. This doesn't work going in through the sand and that kind of thing, so we decided to give it the end of the trip for us.
If God wills, maybe tomorrow. Thank you. Cheers. Thank you.
See you.
As we left the last bit of greenery that we'd see for the next few days, there was one more amazing sight to be seen. And it's not in any tourist books: camels in trucks. But there was still a rally going on, and once again the GPS system lulled almost everyone into going the wrong way. It was such a simple fork as well, but it was several kilometres before you realised that the GPS arrow had turned completely round on itself. Ursula and Karl-Heinz suffered more than most in their Porsche.
Einde van de regelmatigheid.
Did you get that right?
Yeah, we are right.
You were right?
Yeah.
Yes. You're lucky.
Okay. Yeah.
You're probably in the lead now.
Again.
Your job.
How about that then?
Oh God!
That was a bit trick.
It was a big trick, wasn't it? I don't think we did very well then.
Bit of a surprise.
Well, very surprised, yes.
I think everybody was surprised.
Yeah, and I looked on this thing and I think, well, I was sure that it was west, and it said it was west. So I don't understand really, actually. It's for me, it's
bit of a shock. Did you get that one right?
I don't know. I really don't know. I'm very doubtful. Ik denk dat er niks van klopt. Maar goed, het was gezellig en mooi weer, dus het is fantastisch.
All right?
I'm all right, yes. Tedious, but all right.
Sorry.
I don't presume this guy's selling ice cream as well, no?
What?
He's not selling ice cream here, is he?
Where have you been to?
We were looking for some ice cream, and the shop was closed, unfortunately.
No.
Yeah.
So you decided to carry on?
Bad luck.
How was your air-conditioned car?
Fantastic.
Yes?
The best you have. The best you can have.
Is that it?
Just what you need for the day?
Okay,
That's the best you can have.
It was the best regularity we did, I think, within 10 seconds. Normally within 3 minutes.
Most people.
End of regularity.
Did you get that one right?
Yeah, this was not difficult to stay on the road.
It was for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think nobody could lose his way.
Bit of a problem this morning.
No, we not have a problem. The desert had a problem with us.
Yeah.
So you see completely full contact.
So you got stuck in the desert?
A little bit.
Oh, okay.
We joined the desert.
Oh, very nice. The desert and you became one. Oh, there's a lot of sand in there. Had to move forward. Enjoy it.
We do it.
So, never mind.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bill Ainscough and Liz Kennedy had been making their way on the route in their own time in the Vauxhall.
No, about another 300 or 400 miles to do yet, so touch wood, we shall be fine. Oh, she's been running great. Yeah, just like she should be doing. And it's about 150 degrees outside. She's running at 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Pretty good, that, isn't it? For an old car. It's only 3 times that outside, isn't it? Well, oil pressure's good. Got 15 on the oil pressure. 15's not a lot these days, but it's all we can count on at the moment. I'm really thinking we've got a sandstorm coming up.
It's 120 kilometres that way to the nearest town, 100 kilometres that way to the nearest town. We're right in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a baking hot desert, and there's a bus shelter here. Now, we haven't seen a bus, we haven't seen another piece of traffic on this road for the last 2 or 3 hours. And even if there was a bus, who on earth would possibly want to get off here? There's just nowhere to go.
And yet, in the middle of this nowhere, the organisers had found a helicopter landing pad for the crews to have a bit of fun on. Howard Bellum and Chris Taylor were leading the vintage class by now, which was a bit of a shock to them, as they'd never done anything before. Back on the road, and a sharp right onto the sand was causing problems. The shield camps decide to back off and take a run at it. Ah, c'est la vie. How surreal. night we were to sleep under the stars. It sounded romantic, but didn't turn out that way.
An occasion that I find it would be very difficult to forget. I'd like to, but I can't.
One of our friends bought in England here, for he said, there you can have the best sleeping bags. And he bought one, but he didn't know it was for a child. So his belly couldn't pass in, so we laughed a lot tonight.
I didn't sleep very well, I can tell you that. I couldn't find the zip for the sleeping bag.
We actually did stay in the hotel in town, and it was rather enjoyable. Had a nice dinner. Well, I actually had dinner here and another dinner up there.
This was the penultimate day of the rally, and Alistair Colwell was fuming because he'd lost his lead because of what he thought was the unfair nodding donkey test. For the remainder of the day, all we saw was desert. Camels, more desert, more camels, and the most remarkable mirages. There was still one more waypoint test though, in the desert of course. The test itself was quite straightforward, if you could find the right way onto the sand, that is. There was no timing here, so Willie Caver decided the easiest way to do it was to find one waypoint, stop, enter the next one, find that, and so on. Simple really. There was another type of desert for us to see. This one looked like the Arctic Sea, with the small dunes looking like waves and the rocks ice floes. There seemed to be no end to the desert surprises. The final evening was to be another one under the stars.
Well, the idea was fine. I mean, the idea of sleeping in a Bedouin tent appeals to most people. But there's no... When we got there last night, half the tents weren't built and the rest of them didn't have any beds. Tonight all the tents were built but no beds at all. And they've just arrived at about 7:10, before bedtime I admit. And people are having to get them all together. There's no bedding. It's just a great shame. The person who organised it wants shooting basically.
Once sorted, everyone seemed quite happy and woke up ready to start the final day's run to the pyramids. The Dutch do have some strange early morning rituals. Breakfast was in the large tent, while outside even the camels had decided that it was time to get up and take breakfast as well. Howard and Chris had won their class, but had they enjoyed it?
Well, no, it's not anything like as good as the 2,000-mile trial. It's not very competitive.
But you won last leg, haven't you?
Yeah, but that's been luck rather than anything else. And, well, no, I suppose we did. We found all the waypoints and we did it correctly. So that was lucky. But, not really. All these desert sections all cancelled, which has been a great shame.
Sadly, the last big desert section of the rally had to be cancelled because the road had disappeared. So all that was left was a long path home to Giza and the pyramids, which is a welcoming and fantastic sight. So the Lagonda crosses the line as the winner of leg 3. But but it's a Phillips Davis Bentley which takes a vintage class overall with 290 points out of a possible 300. Also on 290 points, the Halls in their little Elan win the club section. And taking the trials category with 270 points and winning leg 3, the McAllisters. The Flying Irish have done it again.
The best 3 weeks fun we've had for a long, long time.
Yes.
For a long, long time.
So last time I spoke to you at the Dead Sea, you just had a bit of a bad day the previous day.
We made up for all of that.
Right.
We've covered everything.
So you've definitely won the 3rd week. Do you think you've won overall? You're not too sure?
There's a fair chance, yes, we may have. We may have.
Are you what, like...
When we see it in print.
Yeah.
Then there were the walking wounded. Some with cars, some without.
We call this limping into the finish.
The Podger Bayliss Elvis had been trucked up from Luxor, and the Jiggins Gypsum Elvis was still in Istanbul.
Time card. What the hell are you doing here? Well, you know, where's your car?
Who said it was going to be a Sunday afternoon drive?